I want you to picture this. You get a mysterious 1-second voice note from your bestie on WhatsApp, who you literally just spoke to earlier. You hit play, and instantly, you hear screams. And not just any kind of screams. These are screams of terror sounding from the speaker, and then silence. Out of complete shock, you think to yourself, was that an accident? Was she playing around? She's at her interview. So there has to be some reasonable explanation for this. Seeking immediate answers, you call back, only for the call to pick up with audio your mind will replay forever. Your best friend screams at the top of her lungs, fighting for her life on the other end of the phone. Finally, it dawns on you, she is without a doubt in grave danger, and it would be up to you to send her help. The call ends, and your attempts to reach out again fall flat every single time, leaving you in a state of extreme confusion, anxiety, devastation. That's how Iniubong Umoren's loved ones realized that she was gone. Before this moment, unemployment rates were sky high, and Iniubong was on a particularly long job hunt since graduating from university. So she took matters into her own hands and basically posted a tweet letting everyone know that she was seeking almost any work opportunity that was available. Suddenly, her tweet goes viral. Like, it is capturing tons of different eyes of many interested leads, which is good news, right? After making such great progress, there was one private messenger who she connected with before her disappearance, causing friends and family to investigate. This finding would have many Nigerians demanding answers to a web of suspicious connections surrounding this case. This is the story of Iniubong Umoren. Hey listeners, real life can be heavy and these stories reflect that, so please check the show notes for specific content warnings related to this episode and for links to support resources. Now the Umorens, they lived in the Akwa Ibom state of southern Nigeria. Their town, Ikot Isian, is known for its strong community where many follow traditional ways of life and focus on agriculture. So while youth finish school to go into agricultural work and other trades, Iniubong sought out employment elsewhere. Iniubong Umoren was born on April 16, 1995, to her father Ephraim Umoren and her mother Benedict Alexander. Sadly, both of them passed away while she was still young, but her elder siblings and aunt stepped up to raise her. She had an older brother, 2 sisters, and an aunt who loved her, and they all supported her educational journey. And from her success in school, they learned very quickly how incredibly smart she was. One day, Iniubong proudly shared on Twitter that she never failed a single class and attached her transcripts to back it up. Okay, she's like, here's the receipts. Personally, I love a queen that got big brain energy, period. Now in 2015, she enrolled in the Department of Philosophy at the University of Uyo and graduated 4 years later with a 4.12 cumulative GPA. But being book smart was not all she was good at, okay? She was also very entrepreneurial spirited because according to her Twitter, this young determined woman started a side hustle making organic skincare products before she graduated, and this was all just to help her family as well as herself, but mostly her family. Sources say she was a top performing player of her department's soccer team as well. So the girl is athletic, she's super smart and excelling in academics, and she's also just an ambitious go-getter. Like, talk about triple threat at this point, right? Whatever she set her mind to, she was damn sure going to achieve it. Y'all couldn't tell her a thing. People who knew her would say oftentimes that she was very honest and highly self-disciplined, passionate, especially for the oppressed, interestingly, which, really goes to show you the kind of person that she was. And she was truly like a magnet because she was very thoughtful and boldly expressive. We learned from her friend, who we're very grateful to have given us more insight on the kind of person that she was, and we will be keeping them anonymous out of respect for them. They said Iniubong was like most people, but just exuded a lot more cheer and glee. She rarely showed anger, he says, other than when she complained about not being productive. He shared that they had a platonic relationship and enjoyed casual conversations. She truly was a bright young woman full of potential. Not only that, but she had very strong Christian faith. Due to the 2020 lockdown restrictions, she couldn't attend church services. And as a recent graduate at the top of her class, brimming, right, with ambition at this point, she wasn't a fan of any of that, okay? Just being idle, it made her feel very uncomfortable, making this one of her most challenging years. And I'm sure many of us remember the deep isolation that came from that time, right? And even speaking as an introvert, I remember feeling this way. So it must have been especially challenging for her. Finally, she decided enough was enough and went to Twitter to put matters into her own hands so that she can finally get a job. Tweet number 1. In Nigeria, you will look for a job until looking for a job becomes your job. Tweet number 2. Yay, it's my birthday, guys. Say a prayer for me when you see this post. And of course, give me birthday gifts as well. I just love her. She sounded like a great friend and sister, truly. Now, this next post includes a graphic design that reads, all I want for my birthday, and in parentheses, call it my wish list. Number 1 is 300 to 500,000 naira, okay, invested in my business, sponsored advanced training in facials and skincare, cash gifts, a job, and in parentheses, seriously, please follow all my business socials, cash gifts again, and patronize my business. I mean, come on. That's just to list a few of what was there. She was just about her bread and just financial security, being financially independent, and just stable. I love that. I really do, because it takes time for people to get to that point of maturity, but not her. She was already there. She was clearly in her locked in boss girl era, even on her own birthday, for crying out loud. But this next tweet caught the attention of significantly more users. Tweet number 3, hashtag Akwa Twitter. Please, I'm really in need of a job. Something to do to keep my mind and soul together while contributing dutifully to the organization. My location is in Uyo. I'm creative, really good at thinking critically, and most importantly, a fast learner. CV available upon request. That tweet was published just a few days after her 26th birthday. Now, if you remember, she lost both of her parents, so it's possible that finances just weren't reliable. And because of the staggeringly high unemployment rates, many Nigerians who experience this economic strain, this desperation makes them incredibly vulnerable, particularly those who are participating in the National Youth Service Corps, also known as the NYSC. We'll return to this point of the story, but first, let's just unpack this NYSC program real quick, okay? Because the context is important to think about when you learn about this case. It's designed to essentially promote national unity through a mandatory one-year program for Nigerian graduates under 30. So these graduates who eventually serve in different parts of the country far away from their home states. This displacement for graduates who are suddenly away from their support system, coupled with the urgent need to find income, it can lead to hasty decisions and perhaps like overlooking red flags that might have otherwise been considered. So they're in unfamiliar territory, right? Under a lot of pressure to find work. And it's just like the perfect recipe to make them easy targets for those with malicious intent. By the way, I didn't even get into this, but their compensation is only 33,000 naira a month as of today's recording. Now that is equal to approximately $19 a month. So as you might be thinking, well, that sounds like it isn't worth it. So why don't they just look at other options, right? Now that would make sense to do, but without an NYSC certificate, you can't really get a government job. And if that's what you've been doing this all for, you almost have to play this annoying game. What's worse is it's almost not guaranteed that you'll actually find one with it. Iniubong was like many graduates who were required to participate in the program. She actively was trying to get employed as she was preparing for her NYSC service while living in Uyo. And that brings us back to the fateful encounter that changed everything. Responses to her Twitter job posting were still pouring in, People showed interest in her post and some asked her to DM them. It also connected Iniubong with Uduak abasi Akpan, who was just 20 years old at the time. Not much is known about Uduak, but what we do know about him is that he was born to Frank Akpan and had two sisters. He was an undergraduate studying public administration, but it's unknown which university he actually attended. Uduak later reported that he asked Iniubong if she would be interested in working as a secretary on a farm, to which she said yes. He then set the location and time for the interview, but what was really strange was how far this location was from Iniubong. I mean, it was hours from where she was. Even with that, she's at this point like, I don't care. You know, a job is a job. If I have to travel hours to get that job, I will do it. So before she left for her interview, she did tell a couple of friends about it, and I think her sister as well. But one of the friends that she told in particular, who we're going to really focus on, is Uduak Umoh. Now, because Uduak Umoh and Uduak Abasi have a similar first name, I'm going to refer to Iniubong's close friend, Uduak Umoh, as Umoh to just avoid any confusion with their names. Umoh is looking for a job as well, but she had trouble finding leads in Uyo, unfortunately. She eventually found one in Lagos, which is about a 12-hour drive from Uyo for reference. Now it's Thursday, April 29th, 2021, and Iniubong tells Umoh that she's feeling a bit skeptical about this interview because of just how far away it was, and she didn't even have the transportation money to go there, so she's kind of getting a little bit of cold feet. But Umoh kindly gives her 2,000 naira, and this was enough to get Iniubong on her way. However, since Umoh wasn't nearby, as mentioned earlier, she suggested that Iniubong tell someone else that is actually in Uyo about the exact location of this interview in case she were to need anything. So Iniubong agreed, and she shared her number with one of her sisters at this point, Ifyok. And all Umoh knew at that point was that she basically had an interview that was supposed to be near an airport road. That was it. Several hours later, after Iniubong sets off to this interview, Iniubong calls Umoh to confirm how far away this place was. And just out of concern at this point, Umoh's like, girl, like you could just turn back. It's fine. It's not a big deal. You can skip this interview. But Iniubong says, no, she's already arrived. So she'll just go in for the interview. And she told her friend that whether or not she'd accept the offer, it really depended on the salary. So she still felt like, you know what, even though I've done all this like traveling, by the end of the day, I'm going to make the decision that's best for me. And so the call eventually ends between them. Now, just after this exchange, things turn for the worse. After a few minutes, Umoh gets a notification on her phone. She opens it and sees a 1-second WhatsApp voice note. She hits play and hears blood-curdling screams. Now worried, Umoh immediately is calling Iniubong over and over, like, what the fuck was that, you know? But no one answers. She keeps trying, worried that something might have happened to her friend, until someone finally picks up. But it wasn't what she hoped to hear. On the other end of the phone, she briefly hears a series of Iniubong's screams before click. It was clear to her that this call could not have been a mistake, and that Iniubong was trying to reach out to her for help before the line was disconnected. But this unknown person with her made it impossible. Umoh calls back twice, except this time, no one answers. She knew that she had to act so fast, so she calls a friend who had Iniubong's sister's number so she can get some help. Umoh really came through for her friend by connecting Iniubong's sister and just asking if she knew anything about her specific whereabouts, like where was this interview, because, you know, she wasn't in the area. Like her friend wasn't anywhere nearby. Her unsuspecting sister did confirm that she got the shared location from Iniubong, but she's like, what the hell's going on? Like, what's happened? Has something happened to her? And so Umoh explains the concerning voice message and phone call she received from her. And Iniubong's sister goes straight to the Uyo police and just tells them at the station, like, hey, like my sister's missing, you know, tries her best to file a report and does all of the right things. Here's how they responded to that. You'll need to wait the mandatory 24-hour period as protocol for missing person cases. That's what they said. As big as this systematic failure was, it wouldn't stop the Umorens from finding Iniubong. Her sister called their brother Ukeme, who lived just outside of Uyo, to help with this search. Thank God. Time went by, but there was no sight of her anywhere. Ukeme remembered calling people that day, hopefully to get some help with the search for his little sister. By 10 p.m. that night, there was still no signs of her. It wasn't until Umoh decided to expose this interviewer's phone number in a tweet that finally friends and family started to approach useful information. Umoh is that girl. Let me just say that right now. Umoh is, everybody needs a friend like her. I cannot say that enough. She was such a badass in the situation. Umoh amplified the search with a Twitter post asking people to help her find her friend, right? And so netizens, thank goodness, quickly sprang into action and traced the phone ID using an app called Truecaller. And it basically belonged to an Ezekiel Akpan. That last name kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it? Okay. This digital search gave Umoh the idea to sift through Iniubong's original tweet. She's trying to identify a user with that same name in the thread. So she scrolls until she finally finds a match and then exposes his profile by posting a screenshot to Twitter for others to continue the crowdsourced investigation. Okay, because people are now at this point, they're invested. They're like, what's going on to our girl? What's happening? We know the police ain't doing nothing because they ain't never doing nothing. Help, like what, they're just ready. But it wouldn't be long before Ezekiel's username magically changed. Of course it did. Then the comment that was replying to Iniubong's original thread by this person suddenly was removed and their account deactivated. This raised a lot of suspicion for Umoh and people following this. Now, the frantic search was far from a standstill, though. Netizens flocked to Facebook for Ezekiel Akpan's profile, and they found an interesting post that he shared from it. Now, in his post, he states that he was supposed to meet Iniubong for her interview, but because his phone died, that he wasn't able to communicate with her. And so he claimed he knew nothing about her current location or anything like that. Okay. Meanwhile, people online were tirelessly looking for her. On April 30th, Umoh's tweet displaying Ezekiel's picture, it caught a lot of attention, even the attention of a girl named Mariam. She DM'd Umoh saying that, yeah, I had a very similar situation with this Ezekiel guy, which is crazy because what? The difference was that his name was not Ezekiel. He also scheduled an interview with Mariam, but after she arrived, she recalled him drugging and sadly essaying her before taking pictures of her unclothed body. Since then, he has blackmailed her for money using those same images. Unfortunately, Mariam's case was never pursued due to insufficient evidence, but Mariam was still compelled to help in this situation, and she was able to actually recall where her assault took place and shared it with Umoh, who forwarded it to Iniubong's sister. Now, at this point, Iniubong's sister is at the police station, and she shared with the media that, y'all, this part pisses me off. The police claimed that their van had issues, okay? That's their story. Because of this, their family would now have to find an operational van and fuel it, as if to add insult to injury, so that they can travel to the interview site. It's like you call police to help you in times of need, not to inconvenience you further. While the police went back and forth with the Umorens, Iniubong's sister received a text that was showing the interviewer's picture and also the interview site location that Umoh got from Mariam. And it turned out to be the exact location that was shared by Iniubong before she left for her interview. This was given to the cops and Iniubong's brother, who acted immediately and headed to the site, which, side note, despite these unbelievable hurdles that the police were putting them through, Umoh and a few friends raised enough money to help support the Umorens so that they could get a van and use it with the police to go to the interview site. I mean, it's like, I'm happy that it worked out. I think it's amazing that they managed to make it work, but I just can't help but be so frustrated with the lack of preparedness on the police's side in such a serious, time-sensitive case like this. It's just inexcusable. But, am I surprised? No, I'm not. And I say that as a Nigerian who understands how things can be in Nigeria. Unfortunately, it's just, there's too many cases like this. Now, Ini-ubong's brother, Ukeme, and the police arrived at the interview site, but they still didn't see their suspect or any sign of Ini-ubong. First, they went door to door with Ezekiel's image, and they were just asking people, do you know who this person is? Have you seen him? But no luck. That is until they eventually approached what appeared to be an incomplete 2-story concrete building on a family compound surrounded by farmland. And to their surprise, an elder man named Frank Akpan is the person who emerges from this home. Police asked whether he knew the man's identity in this picture that they had showed him, and he actually responds, yes, that's my son. They also learned that his son's name was not Ezekiel. It was really Uduak abasi Akpan. They asked him if he knew where his son had taken Ini-ubong for this interview, but he said he hadn't seen him for the last 2 days. Now, the officers arrested Frank and took him straight to the police station, where they demanded that he immediately tell Uduak, his son, to report there as well. So he complied, and his son arrived the next day at the station for questioning. After he was questioned about suspicious foul play linked to Ini-ubong's disappearance, he admitted he had done something very wrong and that he was sorry. Unfortunately, like in many cases like this, we only have Uduak's side of events leading up to Ini-ubong's murder. I'll share other reasons why there wasn't a proper forensic investigation done here in just a bit, but I just want you to keep that in mind. On May 2nd, according to his video interview with the media, Uduak says he lured Ini-ubong under the pretense that he had this security job on his farm he needed to get filled. Now, she agreed, expecting an interview, and he stupidly stated he used reverse psychology on her, but that wasn't the case at all, since Ini-ubong soon faced a life-threatening situation she did not consent to at all, right? So reverse psychology would mean that you would convince her to want to do something she's not even here to speak to that. So I highly doubt that was what it was. When she meets him, he tells her that there's no farm, there's no job. He expected her to want to leave immediately after hearing this, so he tells her he wants to have sex with her. And he claims that she consented under the condition he used protection. And supposedly he did initially, but he later removed the protection, angering her enough to hit him on the forehead with a stabilizer. And a stabilizer is typically used in Nigerian homes basically because of unreliable power supply. Picture a compact rectangular structure about the size of a shoebox, and it's made of pretty durable plastic or metal. You can imagine how impactful Ini-ubong's weapon of choice was in that moment. She also bit his left ring finger before screaming and reaching for the door. But sadly, it was at that moment where he took the same stabilizer that she used on him to hit her, and she collapsed to the ground. He repeatedly struck her in the abdomen, and at that point, he strangled her until she succumbed to her injuries. She would only get to experience 26 years of life before she was murdered. Now, Uduak reported doing this out of quote-unquote self-defense, and after a terrifying realization that she was dead, he buries her body before fleeing the scene. This explains why he wasn't present when the police only found his father at the home. Court and investigative reports say that after the crime, he took off to Calabar, and this was basically where his sister Francisca was. That's where her place was. Investigators would later find at Francisca's place Ini-ubong's phone and bag because he brought them with him. It's also why they later started to look at his sister as a potential accessory to his crime. They're thinking that she has something to do with it. He ran this job scam on at least 6 other women that we actually know of. He claimed he never actually murdered his victims up until now. So his reality was quickly setting in. After hearing this confession, Frank straight up asked his son, he was like, "Why did you do this? I have 2 other daughters in school. You're not my only child. Now, it may seem odd that, his father never noticed unusual items left on the property because, let me tell you, there was so many. But according to Frank, Uduak's dad, people in the area locally, they would fetch water and receive sometimes like free food in the compound all the time. He's like, people come and go all the time, leaving their belongings or trash, but I never would have expected this to be the reason for all of it. So this could have been why he seemed very negligent picking up on all of these warning signs in his own compound that may have foreshadowed his son's crimes. He added he was unaware of his incidents because he hadn't been around for 30 years and that he had just barely retired from working in Abuja. And now he lives back home. Even so, he would still get occasional assignments to go to, so he really wasn't even home that much, according to him. If anything, his daughters were more frequently present, but not really unless it was like the holidays. Throughout the investigation, Frank remained very cooperative with the officials and press. So this home sounded like it was hardly ever occupied by anyone other than Uduak. But the public wasn't believing his father or his sisters and that they were completely innocent. I'm not happy about what my child has done. I can't even believe this can happen to me. After taking them to school and raising them up, justice should be done if the system permits, Frank tells reporters. And I mean, look, at least he wasn't the kind of parent who just blindly defends their child when they've very clearly been proven guilty and have done some type of wrong, especially when they confess. I mean, in this case, he confessed. So, it's like, what are you going to say? Okay, so here's the really messed up part. After Uduak confesses, he actually takes the police right to his dad's compound and shows them exactly where he buried Iniubong. It was under a shallow grave right by this mango tree. He admits he dug it up himself, tied jeans around her neck, dragged her body over, and covered her with a blanket and pillow before piling sand and leaves on top. So the police dig her up and everything matches his confession from what they saw. But hold on. It gets much worse. When local youths and journalists come to check out the place later, they find over a dozen shallow graves. Some of them even have skeletal remains, including what looks like a bone from a literal child. That's not something you'll ever forget. Oh, but that's not all. Scattered everywhere are school uniforms, little kid books, and sandals, job applications, CVs with all sorts of different names, acid containers, and corporate shoes. Corporate shoes are what fresh Nigerian graduates wear for the NYSC, which makes you instantly ask yourself, why the hell are those even there? Why is any of this shit here? Why is any of it here? According to the Daily Post, the local youths say Uduak's family are basically strangers in the area. Their original home is in a totally different village nearby, according to them. One guy, Akpan James, tells reporters that the family built this house about 4 years ago, but only show up occasionally since they have another place somewhere else. Nobody really knows what they do there. A lot of people thought that they lived there, but nope, they just come and go, which explains why there's barely anybody actually inside of the home. So they don't have friends in the community. Their gates always locked, apparently, and there's this beware of dog sign on the wall. When the truth came out, the entire community lost it, all right? The youth were so outraged, they vandalized the Akpan family's property and even set fire to the security house. As a community, they took matters into their own hands because they wanted to make it clear, we're not tolerating anything like this near our home. Meanwhile, Iniubong's family returned home after they were asked to leave the station so that the police can gather statements from Uduak. Then they finally received news from police about Iniubong's murder and were completely shattered. And at first, police offered to take the Umorens to the location where her body was buried. However, days passed and the police oddly put off returning her body. I mean, these guys were failing them in every possible way. It's just, thankfully, the family took to Facebook in an emotionally charged video demanding that they release their sister's body.
I am not happy. I know that the Nigerian police are trying, but also consider me. I am bent. My younger sister, I've not seen her for like 4 days now. And you went ahead and do a press release that she has been hospital when I am not
Who does that? Who does that?
Her other siblings also pleaded simultaneously that they wanted to see her too before the video ended. Finally, they do call Iniubong's older sister, Ezeoke, for her to send Iniubong's picture to identify the body. So finally, they give Iniubong's older sister, Ezeoke, a call. And they're asking her to come and identify the body that was found on the property before inviting them to the morgue for a final confirmation. Before she was properly buried, the police took to a hospital for an autopsy, where Ezeoke and 2 police officers were present. This disgraceful police behavior did not go unnoticed by netizens, who started to wonder if the police were corrupt. One tweet reads, "Honestly, if the police had swung into action the moment the report was actually made, instead of just waiting for godforsaken 2 days, Ini would have been alive now. The police have clearly failed her. They should work closely with family." As the investigation unfolded, things took an even darker turn. Uduak would also admit to participating in one of the most appalling things no one saw coming. It was that he was an organ harvester. What he shares next completely contradicts his previous claim about never unaliving his job scam victims up until Iniubong. He said that after luring these women to his father's house, he would take them to a remote side of the village before essaying them and harvesting their organs. Those acid containers made sense now, and they may have been required to help him speed up the decay of unwanted body remains. But remember when I shared that one of Iniubong's older sisters, Ezeoke, was at the autopsy? Well, she publicly shared with the press in May 2025 that all of Iniubong's organs were intact at the time of the autopsy. And she also spoke against the idea or this belief that Iniubong, her sister, was a victim of organ harvesting as alleged by Senator Natasha Akpoti. Ezeoke felt like these allegations were outrageous and deeply hurtful, which dishonored her sister's memory and re-traumatized the family. And look, she's just trying to get the record straight after having so much of her grief exposed. So you gotta at least respect that, because it's not easy to take back the narrative in such a large case that everyone has strong opinions about that actually concerns your own flesh and blood. In his video confession, Uduak acknowledges that the accusations against his father and his sister, Francisca, he basically denied that they had any role of any of his crimes up to this point and said, yeah, they had no idea that I was harvesting organs. Like, leave them alone. Uduak was finally arrested for the essay and murder of Iniubong Umoren, and his sister, along with his father, were both arrested after being accused for being accessories to the crime. The trial began in July of 2021 and ended up being a 9-month-long process. The evidence presented, including Uduak's confession, the forensic findings, and the testimonies of witnesses, painted a very grim picture of events leading to Iniubong's death. What's interesting about Uduak's confession is that he readily admitted to the murder, okay? But initially, he pleaded not guilty to the SA charge under the belief that it was all consensual. It sounded like he was trying to manipulate the system by downplaying the events leading up to Iniubong's murder. The judge ultimately found Uduak guilty of both charges, and he was sentenced to life imprisonment for the SA charge and death by hanging for the murder charge. But a rather dramatic scene unfolded during his sentencing. Commotion erupted from the courtroom when Uduak attempted to attack a whole lawyer. Officials sprang into action, and it's like, I think he's finally realizing his situation, okay? I think he just woke up or something. The date of his execution has yet to be announced. There have been no new updates on his current imprisonment location as of the time of this recording, but I'll keep you guys posted. Meanwhile, his father and sister both pled not guilty to being accessories to his past and present crimes, and so they were acquitted after the sentencing due to a lack of evidence directly linking them to the murder. Despite this verdict, many still doubt certain details of this case and feel a bit strange about its outcome. Like, for example, why didn't anyone pursue why he had over 12 shallow graves? No one did that. Like whatever happened with that? It's kind of a big deal, I would imagine, right? But no one went back to look into it more. And after Iniubong's murder sparked national outrage, very unsettling connections hinting at something far more sinister than a single perpetrator were brought to light. This is where the work of the award-winning investigative journalist David Hundeyin becomes so crucial. Now, Hundeyin is a well-known journalist who deeply investigated this case with the help of his own sources. He uncovered a web of phone data logs and connections that indicated an alleged organ harvesting network. According to Hundeyin's publications, the day before Iniubong was unalived, Uduak basically called a few different contacts. This was said to include Kufre Ifyong, Blessing Godwin, and Iniubong Umoren. Here's how the events played out according to his research. Thursday, April 29th, 2021 at 1:21 p.m. Uduak calls a woman named Blessing Goodwin, which lasted for 147 seconds. Hundeyin suspected that this was potentially his next victim that he was setting up with a job scam. Now, Blessing would confirm this in a Facebook post where she said she was the person Uduak was talking to. She said there was a job posting on gg.ng that included a competitive salary and accommodation. Think of gg.ng as like a Craigslist website or eBay where you can buy and sell various goods and services, right? So of course, like Craigslist, it's definitely prone to hosting fraudulent posts. Like Iniubong, Blessing was also unemployed at the time and was very surprised that she even got a call from this unknown number. The caller asked if she was Blesky Goodwin, and when she confirmed, since, it was her lesser known name, but her name nonetheless, the caller then discourages her from using her unofficial name with job applications. Like he's just trying to give her free game, I guess. And so he continues to ask her if she was good with computers, and he shared details about this farm and it's on Airport Road, that he needed a secretary for immediate hire, just the whole thing. The caller asked if she was interested. Luckily for Blessing, she needed to reschedule the interview for a different day. She remembers reaching out to him several times to follow up with her CV, but never got a reply, leaving her with her life spared. At 3:38 p.m., Iniubong called Uduak, and the conversation lasted 106 seconds based on the cell phone tower data from Hundeyin's source. At this point, she likely just notified him of her arrival as he remained in his position. This would be her final phone call before the 1-second voice note that Umoh received. About 3 hours after Uduak unalived Iniubong, he repeatedly called an untraceable number between 6:15 and 6:50 p.m. And it's really not common for the Truecaller app to not result in an ID, but when this happens, it's likely one thing. Somebody has a burner phone. And Hundeyin called out Uduak's strange behavior, because why was he desperately trying to contact this unknown number just after essaying and unaliving Iniubong? Who could this person have been to him? And why were there 12 outgoing calls to this same number between April 4th and April 27th that same year? Truthfully, we may never know the answers. On Friday, April 30th, 10:55 a.m., Uduak calls his sister, Francisca, 3 times. She finally connects with him for 51 seconds. And I just think that's so strange because, wasn't he at her house already? I don't know. It's so weird. I think the events around this time were so hard to understand. It's like my brain is trying to break figuring this out on my own. 4:32 p.m. Uduak called a man named Kufre Ifyong for 31 seconds. Hundeyin's investigation found that Kufre is a wealthier, older man living in an upper-class area in Uyo, a total and complete contrast to Uduak's socioeconomic profile, okay? It's like, how do y'all even know each other? But Uduak was like, no, we cousins, basically. They're related. But that's not the biggest connection here. The cell tower sites from the phone records expose Uduak and this Ifyong character meeting several times at a medical NGO facility called the Center of Clinical Care and Research. Since Hundeyin's theories were posted online, Kufre Ifyong, he sought to clear his name. Okay, he was just releasing press release statements and saying that he did speak to Uduak that day. And he confirmed that they were cousins, but denied knowing anything about Uduak's illegal organ harvesting practices. He also said that he gave Uduak a police officer's number so that he could come clean and just turn himself in, among many other hard-to-believe claims. For instance, Ifyong goes on the record saying he never talked to Uduak on the phone before April 29th, 2021, the day of the unaliving. He claims that he only really got involved after the Aruan LGA chairman called him about Uduak's arrest. But wait, because Hundeyin was like, nah, I checked the call records and Mr. Ifyong actually spoke with Uduak multiple times between April 14th and April 19th. So what's the truth? Because that no prior contact story is definitely looking a little sketchy now. And it did to many Nigerian netizens who expressed that this story had several loopholes. After Uduak visited the CCCR branch, he received a text from Ifyong's identified number, urging him to call a specific number. The text read, call him and let him handle it. I just feel like that wording is a little strange. Let him handle it? It's like... That number belonged to a police officer, Crystal Ezeoke, the superintendent of police. It's now 4:40 p.m. Uduak calls this superintendent, okay? Just try to imagine for a second him parading victory of serving justice over this case, because that's what he did. It's the superintendent of police is proudly showing like signs of, okay, we've overcome this case. Meanwhile, the same primary suspect you arrested is sitting there in your call history. It just looks a little funny. Their call was 1.5 minutes long, and honestly, I just can't think of any reason why they might have needed to connect about anything. Like, tell me if it makes sense to you guys. Like, what am I missing? Because I feel like I'm missing something. I mean, we're talking about pretty freaking powerful individuals, potentially those involved in this alleged organ harvesting ring. Now, David Hundeyin, and I got to shout him out because, I mean, he really came through so much for this case and making bigger connections than we would have ever had. He theorized at least one member of the Nigerian police force didn't want their boss getting hit from any of this. So they allegedly used Uduak as a scapegoat and kept legitimate journalists from properly investigating him, which it just seems all the more disappointing. And as for the press, rather than ask the burning questions that everyone really wanted to know, they did the opposite. In the video confession where you see reporters surrounding Uduak, they were wasting this opportunity by asking him such unnecessary, uncalled for questions like, why did you remove the condom, for example, during the essay? Like, what? I'm just, bro. It's like the fact that the Akwa State Police Command, right? They allowed Uduak's hideout to be completely ransacked. So basically any remaining evidence that Uduak Akpan's, home property had, it was destroyed by hundreds of onlookers trampling through the grounds. It's just making it impossible to build any sort of extension to this case. If that doesn't make you raise some eyebrows, I don't know what will. It's also why many people refuse to believe that, yeah, he's the guy. Let's just go ahead and move on and put him behind bars. And yeah, let's not talk about this case anymore. There were just too many signs pointing to more potential perps of this crime. So it makes sense why Hundeyin sought those digital records specifically, because the MPF couldn't tamper with them under any circumstances. And through these records, it's now widely believed that 20-year-old student Uduak Abasi did not commit these crimes alone. Nigerians following this case largely supported capital punishment, but their main concern was that he may not ever get executed because of the high level corruption in Nigeria, which is totally a valid sentiment. One Twitter user remarked, "It'll be interesting to watch the video of him just getting hanged." However, some argued that Uduak's execution wouldn't bring Ini-ubong back and was therefore unnecessary. Now, Hundeyin's work captured a lot of attention, but this eventually resulted in him getting a formal letter by the Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, Senator Godswill Akpabio. He wasted no time to discredit Hundeyin's investigative reports, and in the former senator's letter, he basically was like threatening Daniel that if he didn't retract his statements within 14 days, that he would take legal action against him. But Daniel stood on business. He ignored his warnings. He wasn't about to let anybody play in his face. And when I contacted Daniel to learn more about this, he told me that he has never and will never take his work down, despite the pressure he's been receiving. Even so, none of these suspicions he connected to the crime were ever even pursued. Iniubong's anonymous friend we interviewed had this to say about her being unalived. When she first got to the interview, she told me about it. In fact, after about 2 days or so, I messaged her to ask why she was ghosting me till I saw the news of her being killed. I was just shocked about how one moment she was here and we were chatting, and another moment she was on the news trending for the wrongest reasons, death. I just felt sad and weakened by this news, and more by knowing how the death happened. At times I catch myself analyzing the events of how her death might have happened. I just wish she's found a safe place in heaven, or at least she's no longer suffering. All she wanted was a job so she could become someone good to herself. But instead, she was the job for someone who was paraded as an organ harvester. It's clear that this loss was so difficult on all her friends because of the beautiful soul that she was. And for it to be over something as horrendous as this, I mean, it would just leave anybody feeling similar with mixed and difficult emotions that her friend had. This case reasonably sent shockwaves through Nigeria, and it resulted in the hashtag Justice for Ini-Umoren. Ini, by the way, is Iniubong's shortened nickname, which I love that so much. It's such a beautiful name. The hashtag grew into a larger movement, grabbing the attention of prominent figures, including the wife of the then governor of Akwa Ibom State, Martha Udom Emmanuel. She would lead thousands of women in a protest on May 5th, 2021. Ini-ubong was finally laid to rest 9 days after the protest on May 18th, 2021. As if they hadn't already dealt with enough, it was also a challenge for them to raise funds for her burial too, which is like the last thing you want to worry about after losing your loved one. But I'm glad they were able to at some point, because in some cases, unfortunately, it takes years to finally do so. In a video interview with the BBC News Pidgin, Ini-ubong's siblings, they each shared sentiments about the tragic loss of their beloved little sister. One of her sisters said, "It pains us deeply because we know what our sister could have been in the future. She could have helped so many people in need. Her death, it just hurts us, and we'll never forget it. She used to call me Big Sis. Now I don't have anyone who will call me that again. We're in pain and we miss her." It's just so gut-wrenching to think your loved ones can be here 1 minute and then they're gone the next. Ini-ubong's tragic death ignited a national conversation, not only about the dangers young women face in Nigeria, right? But also about the systemic issues that contributed to her vulnerability, the awful job market for ambitious college students like her. It just put her in an even worse spot. And not to mention the lack of urgency from the police. As soon as they were notified about her disappearance, it just sealed her fate. Ini-ubong's legacy should be a beacon of hope, a reminder that even when the odds are against us, we shouldn't stop creating a better future for the go-getters of tomorrow. And now all I can really say about this is thank God for those who were leading the online campaign. Okay, Umoh was that girl, and Daniel Hundeyin for his incredible investigative publications, and everyone else, right, who has since supported sharing Ini's story to the world for those who still have yet to learn her name. As I do for every single case, I worked very closely with my incredible team of researchers in Nigeria. In this case, because it was Nigerian, I used my Nigerian researchers to help me translate the source material so that I can really provide the most accurate information for this case to you guys. But if anything was incorrect or missed, please let me know and share it in the comments. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, please follow Murder Mystery Motherland from wherever you're already listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.